I want to talk about Islamophobia or hatred of Muslims, and also a lot of the propaganda that's circulating all the time. You don't know what to do with it. In fact, I was thinking of even not bothering because there's just so much in it that it just feels very taxing. But what I want to do instead to talk about the benefits of Sharia law and what most people don't realize is Sharia law always comes with Orf. Usually in Iran and other countries they call it Shar wa Orf, which means Shar means like it's just the basic skeleton of the law, and then Orf means culture or knowing, which means like you don't just take these laws and very harshly apply it to any situation. It goes along with the culture of the people in that area. It doesn't necessarily is not a cut and dry kind of deal. Well, after the Iranian Revolution, I guess the government they appointed what we call like the hanging judge, or because they wanted to kill their opponents. They wanted to kill Shah's, viceroys and all the little personalities that were helping him out, or they were siding with the Americans, and so this hanging judge, his name was Khalkhali, he condemned many of them to death, and but these practices continued because there was a group or people that were benefiting from Shah and his immediate family. So the laws were very harsh at that time. But as time went on and things simmered down, then the application of those laws became less harsh. And while I was watching what was going on with the money exchanger, two of them that they had accumulated each 2 tons of gold, and finally they ended up in the Iranian courts, and then the court condemned them to both to death. But when I was watching the proceedings in the court, they said that he and his accomplice they were jacking up the price of gold and collapsing the Iranian tuman or rial, but they said that this had not been the first time they had been in court. In fact, they had been in court like 3-4 times. They had gotten various kind of jail terms, and then finally they wanted to. I don't think anybody has the right to accumulate all this gold. The tonnage, gold tonnage, it belongs to Iranian people. No particular private entity should have access to so much gold, and also no private entity, money exchanger or anybody, foreign or internal, should have the ability to manipulate the dollar, the gold to-man ratio, or the value of our money, because millions of people use this money and it's only for internal use. While the Americans are doing something similar, but they are committing crime on the international scene because they transported 50 tons of Syrian people's gold that ISIS was holding And I think that the reason that they were interested in this gold was because they're manipulating the precious metal. The same problem the Iranian government has. They want to maintain the value of the dollar in the international scene. And well, I think Mnuchin tried to steal Venezuela's gold. When that doesn't work, they went after the Syrian people. I think at some point in the future there will be some kind of litigation in international criminal court or in some kind of body after the U.S. loses one major military confrontation and they have to deal with all this stuff they've done. Then the Syrian people will come after them and ask for this gold back. Well, I calculated at the rate of about $1,300, the value of 50 tons of gold. I think I might be mistaken, but I have to check the calculation. Came out to about $2.3 billion. That's not even a fraction of what the kind of money that the Americans have blown away in all these stupid wars, especially in Syria. And that's not mentioning that they have lost credibility in the world, in the Muslim world, in all kinds of places. But does the $2.3 billion worth of money replace all the losses? I don't know. But going back to our own discussion, Sharia law has a lot of benefits, and that's why, because it has been adopted in many, many countries. You will be surprised how many places Sharia law is used, and it has been going on for many, many years, thousands of years. But I was arguing with one of the drivers I used to work with, and we were talking about pre-Islamic Iran, and I told him that the pre-Islamic Iran was a very racist society. It was very segmented, very harsh conditions, and I think some of the vestiges of these social strata is left in India. It was very much, there were groups that one was the farmers, and then there were the ayan, or the wealthy, then there were the clergy. And there is an incident that a lot of historians talk about it. It was about Anushiravan, the Sasani emperor, and he, one of his friends, was a wealthy farmer, and he had done a lot of favors for the king. So finally he came and asked the king, hey, let me, my son, he's very smart. I want my son to become in the caste of Mobadan. Mobadan is like the Mogan, where the Majis, the clergy, they had a lot of power. Let this one son of mine come out of the caste of farmers and become one of the affluent Mobadan. And the king refused, because they had such a very strict racial and societal groups. There was no mobility. So when the Sasani dynasty fell apart because of the Muslims came in and took over, well, the Sharia law, it doesn't recognize any kind of crap, such that in fact in the Quran it says that all people are equal in the eyes of the Lord, and the the one that's better, the only ones are the ones that are mindful or fearful of God. So it kind of, the legal or justification for all these crap that was going on in society fell apart. And also, well, just studying this one example, there were extensive taxes that were levied by the Sasani kings, and they were not exceptional in that. There were such taxes everywhere in the Roman Empire, and they were usually levied against the farmers, against different groups that were doing, even shopkeepers. They would use these taxes to pump up their own bourgeoisie, and also engage in endless warfare. And this is similar to what's going on in our times, that the US government publishes money and buys all these weapons and hires all these people and endlessly goes around the world and ruins different countries. Well, it was something similar, but then the Sharia law instituted a different tax system, which is voluntary. It says that if it's voluntary for Muslims. It says that if you are a Muslim, you want to be in God's grace, then you are to give a fifth or 20% of your net income every year to charity, to different good causes, even if it might be your family. And then there was also a 5%, which is called zakat. Zakat means purity. Well, the first one is called khums, which means a fifth, and the zakat means purity, which is about 5% of the net income. So that brings it out to 25%, and a Muslim, in good conscience, you have no other obligation tax-wise to anybody. Once you make this voluntary contribution, then your conscience is clear, and you can go on with your other business and do whatever business you want. This is like a capitalism that is unleashed from all these societal restraints. And there was also, on top of all of that, which is minimal compared to what the other dynasties were charging, it instituted diya. Diya means religious tax on the Jews and other sects. But I think that diya was instituted mostly for Jews, because they are the most criminal or culprit races of people engaged in usury and influence buying, and their history is all these exodus, and then go another place, ruin that place, then exodus from there too. So it kind of diminished their influence, and we see exactly in our world that there is like one central bank that's owned by Jews, and they're controlling all these countries, and they're buying all the politicians. But they kind of put a kibosh on that, and many wealthy people converted to Islam from Christianity and Zoroastrian, which was the previous to Islam, and in Egypt and other places. It was the same. Once you converted, you accepted Islam, your tax rate totally collapsed. And another benefit that many countries they wanted this benefit was that the religion of Islam completely condemns slavery, and this is a problem many places were afflicted with. In fact, at the end of the Sassanid dynasty, before Islam, the even the soldiers were indentured, and it's some what the some historians were saying that when they were fighting with the Arabs, they had chained their own low-level soldiers, so these will not run away and do the task, which is which shows that in this society was so stratified that the work that was very undesirable, the government would not pay, would not do anything but resort to slavery. But even in previous to Islamic origin, Iranians hated slavery, and when they would capture other areas, there won't be any slavery. In fact, in the pre-Islamic Iran, the only slave they had defeated the Romans, and they were using the Roman emperor, I forgot his name, as a slave, but it was mostly like ceremonial. They were using him like when the Khosrow, the king, would wanna mount his horse, he would use him as a stool. But other than that, it was rare. But in Europe and in the Roman Empire, slavery was very much a practice. And when the religion of Islam came, it ended. There was no slavery. There were some in the Ottoman, but even in those places, because there is so much history, oral and otherwise, about Prophet Muhammad, that he would buy slaves and free them. So this practice kind of died out for a lot of the Islamic history that we can go back to. Then another thing that was a benefit at the time to many countries, and they would want to convert, was that religion of Islam allowed women to divorce their husband if she was unhappy, or to inherit land, or to own land or businesses, or what else? At the time, it was a lot of benefits to women, and what else was? It stops oppression toward women. But I think that as the time went on, the Europeans they were more congenial to women, and well, these laws, even though they're old, some people make fun of them, but they don't look at the historical development of it. Then another benefit that the Sharia law had, Sharia judges or the rulers, they kill child molesters or child killers, very harsh punishments. And this also continues with gays, gay men mostly, that engaged in pursuing other men or children. Just once these guys got caught, or they would just be as good as dead. So this kind of ended a lot of strife in society. Well, I don't know in these days with the gay right. I think I still would want Sharia law in some form or interpretation applied to these two groups. We just don't want them to go on. Then the other benefit of Sharia law was that they would prosecute people who create fear, or in Islamic law, it's fear or zulm. Zulm means like create darkness, some kind of fear or general influence that people are fearful of you, or to slander, or to create the impression that hey, you're so much better entity than other people. I think this applies to it has wide application, but I think the meaning of it is like creating, a gang or a criminal enterprise, and people are afraid of, and it has been applied to in different ways. I think the harsher forms of it is called mufsada fil arz, which means somebody who corrupts the whole earth. There is this kind of crime that perpetuates and goes everywhere. It's also it puts an end, Sharia law, also to stuff that's like kidnapping and murder for hire, things like that. Sharia law, just with murderers, they're just done. But the other interesting thing about Sharia law, it comes with Orf, which means that it's really up to society to how harsh these punishments can be. For example, even in trial by judge, there is a lot of tabsare. Tabsare means like exceptions, and by application of these tabsare, the laws are ameliorated for the situation at hand, and they are not as harsh. I think the Iranian government, which correctly applies Sharia law, is going more towards jail time than anything else. And as I said about the guys who had accumulated 2 tons of gold, they had gone through several jail terms before they were executed, because the government just gave up on them and said, you cannot do this anymore. But other thing about Sharia law is that it has so many benefits that the people forget that because it was applied. They never saw how society was before these laws. They never saw the Roman Empire. They never saw the Sasani dynasty. They have no conception, because these laws came in and they put kibosh on all these criminal practices. And so the society grew, and now it's just the presumption that, hey, everything will be like this forever. In fact, that's not true. It wasn't like this forever, and it will not be like this in the future if we stop using these laws to curtail these activities. Well, another thing that the Sharia law is a great benefit is that Prophet Muhammad said that asabiyat means like popping of your veins, like how people get very angry, or it's the characteristics of like fascists or skin worshippers. They think, oh, we are Arab, we are so special, or we are German, that oh my God, we are from extraterrestrial sources. But it condemns racism, and it shuns it, and when these practices are banished in society, there's a lot less racism and slavery in Muslim countries. One other thing that the Sharia law is based on insaf. Insaf means fairness. Like it comes from the root word nusf, which means going halfway in each transaction, economic or otherwise. You should practice fairness, that the other party doesn't get overly disadvantaged. And this goes on in all kinds of economic or political or advantage to both parties. And then also it allows for contracts to be rescinded if it has become too unfair, too much like usury. Nothing is absolute. One last thing is the cultural effect of Sharia and Orf laws. Are many people in, I think in France they're like that too, but in Iran and other countries they look down on bourgeoisie and all the crimes they commit, or economic crimes, and like the practice of thinking that, hey, you got some cash that you really own everybody. That's not something that will go on in a lot of Muslim countries. I think Iranians, they really are not much fond of the rich, but this is a cultural side effect. Well, you know, a lot of Europeans and even in the continent of the United States and in South America, they are absorbing a lot of Muslims too. And obviously it has benefits to them because a lot of the companies, they're owned and operated by Muslims. I think there is something about the tax structure, family structure, that kind of gravitates Muslims to become a little bit wealthier. Well, in the United States, the Iranians are very educated and they all have businesses. Then there is one other thing, is that I think that there is a concept in the Islamic world. It's called barakah. Barakah means plenty or blessing. I think that God gives religion of Islam and Muslims barakah, and the things economically and politically often end up in their favors, except when they start killing each other or killing foreigners. When a person commits sin and or commits heinous crimes, they severe barakah from God, and things do not follow smoothly. They are more regimented and mechanical, or they have a destiny similar to what happened in the United States and in the Roman Empire. Well, thank you very much for being in my YouTube channel, and my stuff is research, and please leave comment and don't be shy about it. Thank you.